You're listening to Cardistry Talk, a podcast that explores the new art form of cardistry. I'm sitting down with notable members of the community to talk about how we can improve our cards, creativity, and community. I'm your host, Caleb Smith. Welcome to the show. Okay. Hopefully that came through right, that intro. That was the first time trying to play the intro on a live episode. So hopefully that worked for you guys. So today I'm joined by Congress guy. I'm super excited to have him on the show. So Congress guy, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Are you experiencing any echo?
No, I'm not getting anything.
Okay. Oh, what's going on? I have the video up on my YouTube video up, so it's like whatever I was saying would come 3 seconds later.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm gonna edit this part out when I make the final post. But right now, you guys got to see the mishaps that happen in live streaming. Thank you guys for showing up, Congress guy. Once again, welcome back. Welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is a fun one. We haven't had many historians or collectors on the show, as I would put it. Obviously, it's very focused on cardistry, so I'm really interested to hear your perspective on things. But just how exactly did you get into playing cards and get into this really niche hobby that we all really like here?
So, oh gosh, let's see. I've grown up always playing card games, from 500 rummy to euchre, different forms of poker, just whatever kind of card games that we came up with at the time. And then I started a family and friends poker club around 2008, early 2008, and we would get together and just play cards for several hours, and did that about once a month. And then as I was doing that, I would go around to casinos around Indiana, pick up a deck here and there to play cards with. Ones like a little hard, some Aristocrat. These are from Caesars down in southern Indiana, which I don't know if it's even still there anymore. Down in New Albany, and we'd play cards with them. And then I would introduce different things into our card games. We do 7-card stud. I play music kind of throughout, or play some blackjack for extra chips, just different games. And in 2011, I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I said, I'm going to find an old deck of cards. They've got to be out there. I went on eBay and I came away finding, and I knew I should have had this out sooner. I found an older deck. Here it is. Let me get it before here. This is BP Grimaud from, I thought it was 1890. They actually literally stamped on the ace of clubs. I gotta get used to my camera here, but the edges they're perfect. And there's nothing wrong with these cards. They've got the blank card, which finding a blank card in a deck and this old is pretty rare. The Joker, I found out Jokers weren't used with this type of deck until the 1910s. And there's there we go. Get used to where I'm at on the screen here.
Yeah.
So you got the kings and all that, and it's all the R for Wa for king. The deck looked like it had never been shuffled. So I said, well, I can't use this in the card game. And then so I went back on eBay, and I had it sitting out. No, I don't. There it is. And I found my first Congress deck. So I'm pretty sure I might have brought this to one of the jams. This one's called Liberty. It's from 1917. It's well worn. It's a well worn deck. Light's not working very well here. Pardon me. So it's pretty worn. And that one is pretty much what got me started. I had never heard of the Congress brand. I didn't know anything about it. And the more I got to kind of dig into the brand a little bit, I started learning more. They are PC brands. You had the Tigers 101, which it's an iconic deck. It was the first one they made when they were Russell Morgan and Company, well before they turned into USPC. Sportsman's 202, Army and Navy 303, those were just plain edges. Congress, Army, Navy 505, gold edges, and then Congress 606, which is what most everybody knows, the gold edges. The 404s were discontinued sometime in the 1890s. That everybody knows today. So that's kind of where I got started. I fast forward a few years. I moved from Northwest Indiana when I was married. So she encouraged me when I discovered 52 plus Joker. I don't know if I was looking for. I think I was looking for card clubs early 2017, and she goes, "Well, it's $25 a year. Just join. Maybe you'll meet some other collectors and things like that." Just dove straight into it. We went to our first convention. My dad and I, who is a lot of long stories in the antique community, and he went down there as a guest to show our club queen, Judy Dawson, who's her and her late husband were very integral in getting 52 plus Joker going, and up until what it is today. Tom passed away in 2016, so I never got to meet him. So he went to go show her some information. He learned about National Card Company, which was a company here in Indianapolis in the 1890s, and he joined right away. When he got there, he thought this is great. And then the following year, in 2018, we were in Cleveland, and I was bidding on nothing but Congress. I decided about that time, this is what I'm focusing on. The artwork, the history behind it. There's something about the art and the cards that it pulled me in. It's kind of hard to describe. And I've tried a lot to describe it. So I was bidding on a deck. Actually, this one right here. I was bidding on this deck. It's called Youth. So 1916. The interesting about this one is it's still sealed.
Oh gosh,
so 108 years. It's never been. Yeah. And I hear a lady in the crowd, somewhere in the crowd, go, "That's the Congress guy." And it struck me as odd. I'm like, "Oh, that's a nice nickname, whatever, you know." I didn't think too much of it. So I already had the Instagram kind of going. I had, maybe 100 followers or something. I don't even remember what the name of my handle was then. But I decided, you know what? If I'm going to kind of stand out or kind of create a brand in this community, I need a name. And the Congress guy just kind of came to me one day. I was like, I'm going to use what that lady said. And I have no idea who said it. I've been to every convention since that we've had in person and virtual. I have no idea who it was or who said it. But whoever it is, thank you.
Yeah.
So
maybe we'll find out.
You never know. I know it was a lady. I don't know who she was whispering it to or what, but I remember hearing that and thinking that's a cool nickname. And I ran with it, and that's kind of where I am now. So
yeah, it's cool to hear that you got started through like casinos and stuff like that. A lot of the cardists I talk to, how they got into playing cards is usually just magic, and then it transfers over to cardistry. So it's cool to hear somebody start getting interested in cards from like gambling and casinos and stuff, because that's not who I genuinely usually talk to on this show. So you get this kind of Congress guy, you get that nickname that you kind of run with. And then recently you actually opened up and started your own website, kind of documenting some of the history of Congress playing cards and just the history of playing cards in general. So what exactly went into creating that website, and what was kind of the inspiration for it?
So originally, my dad had kind of helped set up because he's retired. He's got a lot of time on his hands. We set up one on a free site called Weebly, which he still uses. And I made several pages, detailing some information. I think I had what certain decks that we knew of at the time. Tried to get as many pictures as possible. Resolutions were terrible. They weren't really scans or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But he did the best he could. He sourced a lot of images in his spare time. I kind of provided the information. And it was as accurate as we could get at the time. And that was about 3 years ago, I think is when we started it. As I got more and more decks, I think I'm around 220 decks right now, I think. Just Congress, and that spans about 100 years. From about 1883 to, which I just recently discovered, I have a 2-deck sealed set of Mint series. And the Mint series, I found out through copyright information for USPC, was first used in 1983. So I know I cover at least exactly 100 years of decks. So I ran out of room. And I was looking at just, buying a domain name. Fortunately, CongressPlayingCards.com was available. And I didn't know anything about WordPress. I don't know anything about building websites. So it was a chance conversation with a friend of my wife's. Her late husband was a Mason, and his friend was also. And his wife they run a website called Indie with Kids. So what they do is they go around to all these family-friendly places. They try them out. They basically do reviews and recommendations. And he says, well, what are you looking to do? I said, it's all informational. I may embed a video here and there, which I think I have one or two. Just a lot of information and a lot of images. He says, well, how many images? I said, a couple thousand maybe. I don't know if that takes up too much room on your server. And he says, no. He goes, we got 30-some thousand or whatever, just for my wife. So he goes, you won't take up any room at all. And he goes, and I'll host it for you for free. And I'm just like, are you serious? I said, are you serious? I said, I'll do something in kind. He's got a office out in a kind of a separate building from his house, and I do cabling work. Voice and data, fiber optic. I've done that for 27 years, so that's kind of my field. I said, I'll come give you, upgraded wiring, stuff like that. I've got scrap laying around, a bunch of stuff like that. So I'll come do that for you. Still haven't done that yet, but it's always out there. Just kind of a little thing to help out. It was amazing. I was floored. But the website first, I think I announced it in May that I was going to do this, May of last year. And by the end of September, I had a V1 working website. I was still learning. So as I learned how to do different elements, I would replace the page with the new one, update everybody. Hey, the new page is up. Tell me what you think. And if you go into either one of the pages, your lacquer backs, which are your the Japanese style, usually gold or copper ink, sometimes green ink with solid color backgrounds, kind of like this one here. And I know you know what I'm talking about with the Lighthouse deck that you did some cardistry with, which we'll talk about that. So one's in this style. I had a lot of help from one of my collector friends, Matt Schacht, who has credit on the website for scanning a lot of those images, because most I'd say 70 to 75% of those images on there, he's got a deck, or at least a single. He's an amazing collector. Another friend of mine, Colin Brady, he's one of the other Congress guys, if you will. His collection of Congress their condition and stuff are way better than mine. I collect what I can. They go after the sealed decks. They have a lot more connections, if you will, to some of the older collectors. They've been members for a lot longer than I have. But I've gotten decks from them. They've gotten decks for me, and we collaborate with another member, Glenn Curry, who he hasn't been to a convention in quite a while. Hopefully he comes this year, because it's pretty close to his neck of the woods in Niagara Falls. But we collaborate almost every day in a Facebook chat group. just about what's out there, what eBay's coming up, what eBay purchases we made, just different kind of things like, hey, look, this one showed up. What do you think of this? Things like that. So we're always kind of up to date with what's going on in that area of the niche. So
Yeah. So something I'm interested in about is, I guess, kind of the hunt for these decks, if you will, because I'm assuming you have to do like research or searching on eBay. Do you ever like search in person at like thrift stores, stuff like that, antique malls, or do you mostly like do you guys do most of your hunting online for these rare decks?
yeah, it's mostly online. I've only gotten lucky one time at a thrift store. And that was actually when we were on vacation 2 years ago in Florida. I just happened to stumble across, it had a blue ribbon. It's called Blue Ribbon. They were from like the 60s.
Yeah.
But the writing on the bag, it was in a like Ziploc bag, and it says something about something with woman and umbrella or something like that. I'm like, that's not a blue ribbon deck. I mean, they're just a basic design, just. So I opened it up, and staring at me was a complete mint condition, like 1928 deck. I think it's Congress for $6. I mean, it was worth 10 times that. It was at least a $60 deck, if not maybe a touch more, depending on the collector that might want one. And they're bridge size, so they're not super collectible. But the Art Deco time is still kind of it's still kind of in that. It's fairly collectible, but not really. It depends on who you are. And yeah, I was kind of surprised. I was happy with that. But other people have found other decks, much older decks. They say, hey, look, I found this at a thrift store, like $20. What's it valued? 150, 160. And I need to make sure you got the Joker. Let me see the ace, make sure everything lines up right. Let me see the edges. Let me see if there are any damaged cards. What's the box look like? When you factor all those in, you can arrive at a pretty good idea of what these are worth.
Mm-hmm. And when you're doing like searching through eBay and things like that, obviously, like you said, there are some people or collectors that will be selling you stuff that knows what they have. Do you guys ever find stuff just like old playing cards on eBay or antique playing cards, and like people just don't know what it is, or like, is that a pretty common thing, I would assume?
Yeah, it's a little more common, I think, than one might think. I've got some great deals on there, but at the same time, I've helped people. It's like, okay, you're kind of close. Like, I'm just like friendly. Hey, how you doing? I see you have this deck. Let me tell you a bit about it. Things of that nature. And usually like, oh, hey, thanks for the information. I appreciate it. And they do nothing with it. I say, hey, you can list this for 5 times what you're asking. You can put a buy it now for this much money. And some will do it and others won't. Others have them. There was one I saw, it had some dogs on it from probably the 60s. And this lady wanted $400 for them. And I'm like, I said, I appreciate, I said, I just want you to know, I said, I'm not being disrespectful, but this is not going to sell. Not for $400. I mean, you're talking the bear lacquerback or the lighthouse that you did some cardistry with, which we'll get into, of course. Those are $400, $500, $600 decks, easy or more. And I said this one here. I mean, you're going to have to take about every zero off of there. You may get it for $40. I doubt it. It depends if somebody really likes dogs or if they're a different type of collector or whatever. And then, I'm just putting it on here because, my boyfriend or husband wants me to sell it. And, I want to say, I want to keep it, but I want to say, look, nobody's buying it, So you get some of those too. But every once in a while, you come across one that it's like, I can't believe this is on here. I have to buy it right now. No matter what the price. It says buy it now. I just click. And sometimes they get a steal. And there was the one which Matt turned me on to. And I just posted this recently. I got to get it out of the bubble wrap here because they did not package this very well. But that was the half brick.
Oh yeah, I saw the picture of that. That's really
interesting. Yeah, and it looks like it had water damage, and you can tell that at least that green deck was right there on that spot. But it's got a couple of back designs on them that you're seldom seen, and the cards have been gone through. They're not in new deck order. I don't think they've really been played with. I think they've just been kind of shuffled around just to kind of look and see what they were. But all the cards, when I got them, they were all stuck together. So I just did a couple little bends, kind of pop them loose. And, you know, they're rough, but they probably haven't been used in 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're pushing 100 and they're in mint condition. Every one of them. I got it for $75. I said, Matt said, hey, look at this. It's bridge size. They're not really into bridge. I think I'm slowly starting to get them there. Like, you know, because the bridge decks are fairly common on eBay. And, but I mean, $75. I mean, a couple of those decks in there are probably $75 each.
Yeah.
If I had to put it all together, I would probably sell it for $400.
It's really cool, the brick box. Like, you don't see a brick box that's flat like that. I've never seen one like that.
Nah, it's about as wide. It's about as wide as a deck, about as thick. They just sit right in there, and cover goes over it.
Mm-hmm.
They're extremely rare.
Yeah, Dave Shawnee,
that's Dad.
Shaney, Dad. That makes sense. He said tell the Norwood story. So
okay, I know what he's referring to. So in the Facebook groups, there was a lady from San Diego, and she said her grandmother had cards, and she'd passed away. She inherited them, whatever. They've been sitting in boxes for 50 years. So she kept sending me random pictures of stuff like, can you help me out with this? And some of the stuff I didn't know much about, but I know the people that know. So I passed it along. And I was driving home from work, and I get a message come through from this lady, and I opened it up, and I dropped my phone and about slammed my brakes. I was like, okay, it's called Norwood 85 or 85 Norwood. This deck was one produced in 1909. They used two back designs. It was called The Awakening and The Storm, and it's kind of angelic. Worldofplayingcards.com. It's a UK site. If you search that and look up Norwood 85, it'll kind of tell the story. I think it's by the late Rod Starling, who just passed away recently, longtime member. And so the mystique behind these decks is that they took, I think the brand was called Bijou, Bijou, because they've only ever been found in Bijou boxes. The Ace, I think, says Norwood on it. The Joker says 85 Norwood. It has a bunch of like gold medals, like awards or something. Arguably considers some of the greatest back designs ever created by USPC, according to some collectors. The story goes they know of 9 decks in existence. Very few, I think, were made. They never left the factory. They were never for sale. There is a copy. I've seen a photograph of a copy of the ledger where it shows 85 Norwood, and the quantity is 0. This is blank. It's the only record that collectors have seen.
Mm-hmm.
So out of these 9 known decks, a 51 card deck sold at the club auction in 2020 for just shy of $2,000. One card missing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, when I saw the picture, it was mint condition, complete. And I told my friend Colin about it. He lives out on the East Coast. He's a Massachusetts guy. You can tell by the accent. He's a great guy. He's something else. But he's at his sister's house in Tucson, Arizona. And oddly enough, he was down there the same time last year when we went on vacation to Arizona, so we hung out. But she was in San Diego, and he says, I've been looking for one of these decks for 40 years. Out of those 9 decks, I think 4 or 5 are in museums. It's that significant. I think one of them still resides in the USPC archives. So there's probably only 3 or 4 even available to collectors, if that. So to have one of these show up was amazing. They made a deal. He drove, I think he left at 4 a.m. from Tucson to get out to San Diego to meet the lady at her house, made the deal, drove back to Tucson, and he got back at 10 p.m. Posted all over some of the card collecting groups on Facebook. Then the subject came up: is this one of the 9, or is this an unknown 10th deck? Because it had been missing for so long. We're pretty sure that the lady that collected wasn't a member, but at the same time, could it have been acquired from somebody who had one of the original 9? And from what a lot of these longtime collectors are saying, it's one of the original 9. It's probably not a 10th deck. So it is one of the biggest white whales, if you will, of antique card collecting, or card collecting in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's really cool. I know for us cardists, we'll kind of cringe at $30 or $40 for a deck. I mean, obviously there's less history and stuff like that, but
Sure.
hearing somebody drive overnight and paying, you could pay up to a couple thousand is mind boggling.
Yeah.
But like you said, it is history, and it is being limited is crazy.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. It is very, very, very rare. That's for sure. You just for one to pop up like that out of nowhere. I mean, it's close to a once in a lifetime opportunity, basically, because they're all in hands of collectors. So if you want to get one, you got to find that collector. This just showed up in somebody's box in their house,
mhm.
and you get lucky like that sometimes.
Yeah. How do you feel about USPCC and like the history of playing cards being preserved? Is that anything that you've thought about? Or because I know for at least cardists like myself, we really don't know much about the history outside of like the Cincinnati to Erlanger move. So what's your kind of thought about how the history is being preserved for these playing cards?
Well, I think there's a kind of a double edged sword for me with reproduction decks. You have the Kata transformation decks, that like 6 deck series, which those are from like 1802 to 1809 or something. Um, and I mean, you're not going to find those. I mean, there's probably only a couple of them in existence, and they're all in museums. I'm sure. I don't know of anybody that even owns an original one, but I'm sure they're out there. You have your Hustling Joe, your Ye Witch's Fortune, and I think, did they redo New Era? I think they did. And there was another one in there somewhere. And they're selling them, $20 or whatever. It puts the history out there for an affordable price, but I also think it detracts from people that get into it and want to buy an original. Because when you get into like Hustling Joe and New Era, I mean, you're looking at $300 to maybe $1,000 for a mint condition Hustling Joe, the transformation deck. Because transformation decks they're very popular in the antique community, and it will cost you some money to get one of them. They're I wouldn't say they're rare. I mean, they're uncommon. I actually had a chance to trade for a Hustling Joe last year to my friend Colin, and I balked at the last minute. I was like, I just don't know if I want to give up. I forget what Congress deck he was wanting. I think might have been Cash and Trade or something at the convention, and I had it in my hands looking through it. And Colin, if you're watching this, I might make you a deal this year. I'm thinking about it. The trade's got to be right. I don't mind paying, but sometimes trades go a long way with some of these decks, because some are hard to find. But if you know somebody that's got one that doesn't mind giving it up, it's usually a little easier. A lot of the older antique collectors would rather trade than sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. I think there is something like about like looking for the good deal and like trading for stuff that can be like really fun and enjoyable, or hunting
Mhm.
for I mean just in any hobby. Like I think I've probably done that most for like video games in the past. But just like collecting and trying to work out a deal that benefits everybody is it's really cool. One thing I do want to ask you, you mentioned with the 6 deck pack, the half brick, that it was shipped in like bubble mailer and it might not be, or bubble, it might not have been the best. How do you go about protecting your rare decks of cards, these cards that are worth like hundreds or potentially even thousands of dollars? Do you have any protection method, or is it just let it be?
Yeah, carrot cases.
Hmm.
From Carrot Case Creations. These are the XST carrot cases. These aren't like yours a DS1 or whatever they're talking about. Because the decks are a little larger because of the
Yeah.
tuck box. It's a thicker construction. I like this one. This is the Widow from 1909, and this box is perfect. I mean, you could put this on a shelf today and somebody think it's brand new.
Yeah, it looks crispy.
Yeah, I got the from my friend Matt through a trade and some other stuff, and it still has the glassine wrapping on it. It's still somewhat sealed. It's been removed, so you can take the cards out. So it's mint condition.
Mhm.
But but the interesting thing about this is all these decks were sealed. I mean, they came apart like this, but they were also sealed at the bottom with a tack stamp. Goes right around here.
Mhm.
This one has no remnant or indication of a tax stamp, which to me makes it, I wouldn't say more rare, but it would be one that was probably never sold. So it could have left through somebody at the warehouse at USPC to say, I'm going to take this or whatever.
Mhm.
It never went out. It never went out for sale. It was never taxed. And to find one like that it's a rare occurrence. It's one of a few that I've seen. But in that condition, it's probably the best example you're going to find.
Mhm. It is really cool to hear you describe the whole stamping, because I feel like a lot of people, once again, Cardis not knowing our history, but wouldn't know that the stamp that is covering the deck was actually had a purpose at one point, and it wasn't just like
Mhm.
decorative or to keep it
Yeah.
sealed.
Yeah, now they're blue seals, black seals, red seals. This is an example there. You can see how it goes over the side there. And all they would do is just take a knife or something and just slice it right there, and then the box would just slide open. So a lot of them are still intact. Some are missing pieces. They have cancellation dates, and it's impossible to see on here. But a lot they'll say canceled, and these are 2-cent revenue stamps. But by 1917, they would stamp it 7 cents. So they would use the old stamps, but then put the new rate on it. And they would have certain dates on them. One on a steamboat deck I think is 5-1. Here it is. It's a class A. It's a different 3-4-1919. So they would tax them the rate. This class, I forget how much a class A was. I don't even know what that means. But it was used in the 1910s to I think early 1920s. And that might be just for a certain type of deck. I'm not really sure. I mean, I think stamp collectors might have a better idea, or someone that's researched tax stamps. And then in 1965, when it ended, then USPC went to the perforated blue seal. And then from there, they moved on to, it still remained the same, but the perforations went away, and then the corners were more rounded, kind of what you see today.
Mhm. And what is your opinion on like using these decks? I know we've talked about like how you protect them using the cases and everything, but obviously you've brought some of these rare decks to Midwest Jams. I'm gonna throw a video up on the screen right now of
Mm-hmm.
me shuffling on an older deck, which a lot of people would be scared of or kind of freaked out by. But what was your thoughts on actually using these decks as intended?
There are some that I've used in card games. One of them from 1899, which actually it was the one with the mill on it that I brought to the first jam when Nate was there. You guys came to Indianapolis. That first video from 1899, and then the Moon Fairy also, which was I'm sure there's examples out there somewhere in the videos from 1901. Colin and I played a good game of couple games of cribbage with the mill deck, and I used the Moon Fairy, the 1901 deck, which I think that's the one you did the kickflip with here in 22.
Mhm.
We used that one in a 5 or 6 hour card game here, poker game. They were a little clumpy at first, but once you kind of get the oils and stuff from your hands on them, that smooth finish. I mean, those cards were flying across the table in about 6 or 7 hands, and they held up the entire night, no problems. I mean, just like any other card you have now, just not as not as slick because they didn't have the air cushion finish. That was still a few years away, which everybody knows the air cushion. It was actually trademarked by USPC in 1907. The first use of air cushion was January 1907. I think it was registered or accepted in May of that same year. So air cushion's been around for 117 years. Jeez. But a lot of people don't know that. And it's funny because when Reggie the Cardist was at that first jam that I came to, I remember, and I know he's on video saying, he goes, "I didn't know they made cards that long ago." Now, yeah. Okay, he's still in high school, so I'll give him a pass on that. Oddly enough, the school he goes to was my rival high school. So, oh, really? Yeah, he was one of our rivals in football. At least back when I played back in the early 90s. Now I'm really aging myself here. But it's nice to be able to bring some of these out and show some of the younger audience, like, hey, look, they're old, they're not in the best shape, but look, you can still use them. And Nate and yourself and there was somebody else too. Spud there last year. I mean, you put cards in hands of people that are as skilled as you guys are, and I mean, it's maybe it'll get some people interested in the antique. I know that some of my antique collector friends weren't as enthusiastic about seeing those videos. One of them, I kind of had to talk off the ledge. I was like, it's okay. Yes, I know that lighthouse is $600. Okay, it's my deck. I bought it. I'm gonna have somebody use it. And as far as I know, that's the oldest deck that's been used for cardistry. Now there is video of Chris Ramsey with the original extra bicycle, which is gilded, from 1885. He did packet cuts at CardCon. And you can hear, he was scared. Like, oh, I'm scared to use this. I'm like, just use it. I understand that one because that's a mint condition V1 bicycle. I mean, we'll just call it V1 for the modern guys here. So I get him being nervous about that. And okay, full disclosure, I was a touch nervous when you grabbed the Lighthouse deck to use it, only because of that big bench out there that had the slits in them. I'm like, oh, please don't drop one through there because I will rip this out of the ground to get that card back.
Yeah.
So, but I want to know what do you think about the kind of the finish and the handling of some of these decks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't remember what all ones. I think I have done a little bit with some of the other ones besides just the Lighthouse, but the Lighthouse was the main one I used. I was surprised how good they are for like packet cuts. So like just kind of blocks.
Mm-hmm.
They did not fan at all from what I remember.
No, they definitely were not made for that.
But they weren't nearly as brittle as I would expect something that's 100-year-old or more. They still had like some spring to it. I think the smooth finish decks, just in general, I feel like they last a lot longer than air cushion finish. I don't have any science to back that up, but that does feel right to me. I feel like air cushion, maybe because of the dimples, they get oil and dirt and stuff caught in them.
Yeah.
And I think that might degrade them faster than smooth finish decks.
There it is. It took me a while to put this back in new deck order after you used it, but
yeah, that's something else that I'm not used to is not one-way backs.
Yeah, that's probably one drawback to those. But I'll tell you what, though, that video though, just the way that ink was, just of the sun on it was, I think it was a perfect day for it. I mean, the sun was just hitting it just right. I'm like, that looks nice. I was impressed by it. I mean, I'm not a cardist or anything. I mean, it's amazing how you guys can manipulate cards to do what they do. And I was just kind of a spectator or anything. I'm like, you know what? Let me bring some cards. Let's see what you can do with them. Let's see what happens.
I mean, and two, like you said, it's like a little nervous for sure. You don't want to get a bend in a corner or something, especially if it's someone else's deck, not yours.
Sure.
But I feel like it was really looking back on it even more than in the moment. I was like, oh, that was a pretty cool experience actually. Like that was something very very rare. So
Yeah.
thank you for allowing us to do that.
Oh, it's not a problem. I will. Let me see. Where is it? So I've got a new contender. I picked up in October at the convention auction. So if we want to set a new unofficial record for oldest deck in cardistry, I've got another one that's 2 years older
Mhm.
from 1883. It's same Joker, Lord Dundreary, different ace. This is the V1B is what I'm calling it because it's the first ace that Congress they use for the Congress brand. The original one, the background was more shaded, had like a big shadow to it. It was a little more elaborate. I think they got away from that probably from just printing too much. Like, hey, it's not working out right, so let's kind of take it away. And then the pips and the pips are they're still big, but the indices are a little bit smaller.
Mhm.
But I mean, that's just how they made them. And this one, I mean, would probably be a little bit better because it looks like a one way, but it was a 2-way back design because it's just concentric rings
Mhm.
going all the way around. So, but yeah, I had to battle a Joker collector because he has decks, but he has a lot of Jokers, but he didn't have a Dundreary Joker. The Joker alone will set you back at least $100, depending
Oh
on.
gosh. Yeah.
This is the first type. There's another one that has US in the corners. And there's another one that has US in the corners with a oval border. Those are extremely rare from the 1890s. I would suspect you'd probably pay $200 for that Joker, 150.
Mhm.
They're extremely rare. And on my website too, if you look under Jokers, under the subcategory for Dundreary, I have all 5 versions in there. There's 3 of the first version with just Lord Dundreary. There's some different, like one's a little darker, one's a little lighter. There's little variations, which I didn't even realize until it was pointed out. And then the one with the US, and then one with the oval border, getting rarer each time, even though they're not as old. So yeah, so I got into a battle with that one. I came out on top. Probably went a little higher than I think most expected it to go. But I was happy. I won the auction at 475. So
Mhm.
for a VG, very good condition deck. I mean, it's one of the original boxes. It was still a good price, but I think it went a little higher than most people expected. But I wasn't losing it. I lost out on a deck in 2019 to a singles collector. It didn't have a Joker, but I wish I would have been a little more aggressive because 2 weeks later, the deck was on eBay at $15 per card, and there's probably I bet there's not even 10 of those decks existing, and now there's one less. Singles collectors have been around since the 30s, 40s. They're swap cards. So, you have a deck over here. I have a deck. I'll give you traded cards, just single cards. Very prevalent in Australia. Melbourne playing card collectors. They're pretty much all singles collectors. And yeah, they break up decks, but that's what they do. They've always done that. But, if we need a deck, we got to beat them to it. They're kind of the bane of our existence. And Joker collectors too. I got nothing wrong, nothing against them, except when I'm trying to get one. Then you're my enemy. I'm gonna win. So
I do think it's really interesting that you have these singles collectors, like you say, like people that just collect Jokers or Ace of Spades or whatever it is,
Mhm.
because it is like kind of disheartening that you're breaking the set, but it is like creating an opportunity for someone else to collect the card that they want.
Sure, sure.
But
And
but
there's a
yeah, I
lot
can
of deck
see how
collectors
for
that
you
just have
that'd be a
singles.
nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I had and a friend of mine. He gave me. I have one Joker. It's a matching Joker called Fisher's Return. This is from. Let's see. This particular one was 1901, and 02, I think. But it's a beautiful back design. Buddy of mine, he kind of threw it in for free because I don't have the. I've got a deck, but it's in rough shape, It's a little newer. I think it's like a 1905 ace. It's a different ace of spades than what this one would have. And so whenever I get the deck one day, as long as it has the correct ace, I can partner it with the joker, so I can complete that deck. Because I don't have a lot of decks left anymore that don't have jokers. I was able to complete 9 decks at the convention from one collector. He had a bunch of jokers, and I walked up. I had my little list on my phone. I'm like, hey, I need that one, that one, that one, that one. So I got 9 jokers, $100. I'm like, okay, about 10. One of them was $20, and I think all the other ones were 10. It's like, dude, the training room just opened. I'm already down $100, but I just completed 9 decks, and that's why I needed them. So one of them was a wide. The rest are all bridge, wide, basically normal size decks, poker size decks. So it cost me a little bit at the get go, but I still went over later on, and he had some more Congress decks I needed. So he probably ended up getting about half my money at the convention, but I added to the collection. So I'm getting there. Still a long way. I'm about 30% through the first 50 years of the brand. I got a long way to go.
Yeah. For you, I'm curious how much like the value of a deck increases when it becomes complete. Like, is there a big difference between 51 cards and when it's actually complete? How big of a jump does it make?
It depends on the back design. There are, like I said, the older ones. They're more scarce, more rare. It also just depends on the collector. Actually, my wife picked up a deck for me. She found it. She found it on Facebook Marketplace down in Mason, Ohio, there by Kings Island. It was called Holland. Actually, I have the example. Oh, so this is the other deck I have. So it's from Holland. You see the windmill in the back with the lady. So this box here, this is not the original box. I got this at auction a few years ago. I paid $270 for this one, but this box is from the 1910s. So I'd say between 1913 to 1915, roughly. And it has, so it has this ace of spades, and it has, wrong side. Then it has this joker. So they call them matching jokers because they match the back design. So these are the most desirable of the Congress decks. So my wife sent me a message on Facebook, or texted me, say, hey, look at this listing here. It says she's starting to learn what to look for, because she's like, how do I know what you collect? So I sent her a link to the website page, boxes. So here's, congresplayingcards.com/boxes, whatever the URL is. And I said, scroll down, look through, the date range. I said, these are the types of boxes you look for. There's like 50 of them on there, different variations. And she found one. It was that deck, no joker, $5. Without the joker, it's probably about 85 to 100, because it's a harder to find back design. Fortunately, this one had the correct box, so I may swap those decks, because this deck is the one I already had is a lot better condition. But to find the joker, if I found one, it'd probably set me back $50 to $75 or so, depending on the collector, because they're so hard to find. There's one deck I have that didn't have a joker, a matching joker, and I've been looking for that one for about a year now. I may stumble across it one day. I may not. But to add the joker, Judy Dawson once said, if you don't have the joker, it's going to devalue by 90%. I don't buy that. I'd say it's probably closer to 50, maybe 50 to 60. It depends on the condition, rarity, the desirability of the back design, things like that.
Do you think the joker is more valuable than the ace of spades then?
Yeah, because it completes the deck. There are certain aces, though. I mean, people collect them that just, to me, the joker is everything. It makes a complete deck. You also have advertisement cards that were put in with, since some are pieces of paper and others are just their cards. Let's see, I have an example of one. If I can find, where's my sunset deck? This one I did not. This one's a little, it's mint condition, but the cards are rough. Can I show you what I mean here? So this was an eBay find.
Mm-hmm.
I did a video on this one. So you get little advertisements like this. This one's actually paper. They were just put in there.
Yeah.
And it's double-sided. So it's got bids at auction. So it was, is this bridge? Copyright 1914. So based on the year that's back designed. So this is actually a 1914 deck. I think I think it's bridge or even whist before they narrowed the cards. But just having those in there kind of really, to use bad grammar, more completes the deck. Sorry, the bad grammar. I'm looking for a term there, and I can't think of it.
Makes it betterer.
There you go. Makes it much more betterer. There you go.
Much better.
Yeah. Oh, and this deck here, there's only I think 7 or 8 in existence that we know of so far.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I call them landscape oriented, and I've got a page on that. They made 5 of them. I have 3, and one of them, there's one known, which a buddy of mine, he has all 5, and another one, I had a chance at a 4th one, and I really wanted this lacquer at the convention in 22, so I saved my money for it. I should have bought the other one because it was mint condition with wrapper. I should have just bought it because I tried after the convention and he wouldn't sell. I'm still kicking myself. This other one, the Forager, I like this one. There's, I think, 8 of these. I own 3 of them. There's only 2 or 3 with jokers, and I have one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But the box, like this one here, I mean, boxes got a side missing. But when I found them on eBay, I'm like, come across both 2 of them on eBay. The one with the Joker came from a friend who, oddly enough, had 2 decks with Jokers. I bought them right away because you just don't see them. You don't see them. I mean that deck there. I mean, I'd probably sell for $65, $70. The box is beat up, but find another one. That's kind of where it's at. They're a little more valuable, even though they're beat up, because they're so hard to find. Another example while I'm at it. So this is one of the Fox Hunt series. This one's called The Kill. And this is a regular card just pasted on. So that's why it looks rough. There are, so you can see a real shiny in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
So that is another card. So this was the original card that came in it. I found one in Australia, but if you can see the 8 and the 9, the difference, the 8's a little more bold, which means it was probably a little bit later version. It's not going to affect the value because the back design's the same. I don't think it will. And it was So my friend Matt found this on eBay, and he's like, "Hey, does that have the Joker? Oh, I guess it didn't have the Joker. Okay." But still, I forget how much. It wasn't much. He had never seen one on eBay, and he'd been on eBay since the beginning. And he said, "This deck has never come up for sale on eBay." I said, "Well, I can't get it right now, but grab it and I'll make you a trade." And I said, "You got something in mind?" He says, "Yeah, I got such and such in mind." I said, "I'll send that to you. When that comes, you send it right to me." And he did, because he has another one. And as far as I know, we're the only 2 that have them. There's probably at least another 1 or 2, but I easily say there's less than 5 known, and there's one right here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you kind of luck into these, but when you kind of friends with the right people, if you will, but we're all collectors. But I kind of just became friends with some really good guys that just happen to know a lot about, where to find these and what to look for. And I've learned a lot from them. And a lot of the information on that website comes from them. It comes from things that I found, things that my dad had found. So I have to give them a lot of credit too. I mean, I may be known as the Congress guy because that's kind of what I dubbed myself. But some of these other guys are, they're kind of behind the scenes, but they really kind of help me to put the information together and get it out to everybody.
Hmm. Do you find that the kind of antique deck collector market is growing or kind of the same? Uh, how does it kind of feel like it's been?
It's a little tough. There was a guy who just passed away. He wrote about antique card collecting is kind of dead. I think it's something similar to, was it Cardify? Somebody wrote that deck collecting is dead recently.
It was
Or
an illusionist.
Yeah, illusionist. I think he was just complaining. That's a different subject for a different day. So, but basically a lot of these antique collectors, I mean, they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And they're not real well known in the community because they just don't use computers. They've been club members for a long time, and they just they don't put it out there. So we kind of know, just kind of tracing back, like this deck, I got it from this guy. Well, he said he got it from them, and then they kind of just traded decks over the years because the club was real small, and it was the 52 plus Joker was founded in 1985, just by some antique collectors out on the East Coast. They got together, formed a club. Just word of mouth, maybe newspaper ads here and there. The conventions were real small. The same people trading the same decks. The club magazine is called Clear the Decks because people were clearing out their decks to get others. And they kept that name. And then more and more people started showing up. The bigger they got, internet came around. Lee Asher shows up. He's a young guy. Mr. Jerry's Nugget. They put him on the board right away. We need youth in here. Jackson Robinson shows up in 2013 when he launched Federal 52. And he kind of got in with the club president, the late Tom Dawson. And Tom was kind of a visionary. I wish I would have met him, but he passed away a year before I joined. He kind of saw what Jackson was doing to some of these modern guys who were starting to show up. Because a lot of these old guys, and I'm kind of rehashing what Lee Asher said on Decking Around back in 2020. He said all of a sudden these old collectors were presented with bricks. I mean, these guys. I mean, to find a brick, from the 1900s. I mean, good luck. I mean, who knows if they even packaged them like that? I mean, I personally don't. We've got a half brick right there. From the 20s. But they probably exist in one form or another. But a lot of these guys had never seen it before. So as Lee told a story, he's like, well, yeah, I'd like, buy one. I'll buy, I'll buy one for the grandkids. I'll buy one for friends. And it kind of took off. And he said, I'm repeating Lee's story, but he said, Tom saw this. And he said, after their convention, I think it was in 2013, they changed the club constitution to make it playing cards only. It was no longer an antique club, which is basically 1931 and older. It's still how they define antique. It was now antique, vintage, modern, designers, magicians, now cardists. I mean, anybody, if you collect playing cards, if you have 2 decks, you're a collector. So he opened up to everybody. And they said for the next 10 years, which we just hit 10 years, they were going to get the best designers around to come to the club and create a club deck. And Tom never got to see that through. He got to see a couple years of it. But they made their 10 years, and they're going to keep going. I haven't heard any indication they're going to stop. I don't know who's designing it this year. I haven't heard anything about it, but who knows? I mean, nobody's repeated yet, so somebody might. We just don't know. But that's always a popular thing, especially with Lorenzo's in 2021. The 999 decks sold out in 2 hours because people who weren't part of the club heard that Lorenzo was making it, the club deck. They joined $25 a year. They joined just to buy that deck. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they put a limit on it either. People were buying dozens of them and then turn around on eBay and selling them for $200, which to me, that was disrespect to the club. You're joining to make money. But, I had a long conversation with Lee, and he says, once they buy it, he goes, we're not in to make the money. They're $30 a deck. for club decks. So if you get them early, you can avoid the secondary market. But a lot of the club members who, weren't there for the launch because they last a while, were upset. So they had to print 500 more unnumbered and limited to one. Whoever didn't get it had first chance. And then after that, they opened up to whoever else. So they had to print another 500 decks. And they had a good learning curve there. Lorenzo is at the top of the game. He's like that tier one. Him and Low Track. I put Jackson up there. Kind of some of those guys is like tier one, designers. Like their stuff, sells out fast and sells high. So, if you're not a member, join 52plusjoker.org. Sign up. It's $25. The convention is in Niagara Falls this year, October 2nd through the 5th. It says the 6th. The 6th is on a Sunday, but everybody leaves. It actually ends on the 5th. I think the room rate, I haven't seen it. It's typically around $110 to $115 a night, which they try to keep under $125. I think it's $50 to register just to get in. They give you a table, I think it's 6 foot, 8 foot table. So you can set your stuff out to display, sell, trade, whatever, show off. And then another $50 for the awards banquet dinner, which is Deck of the Year and Artist of the Year. And the Dawson Award, which is Judy gives that award. It's a monumental strides to the club, lifetime achievement, basically. A lot of people that have been there, contributed for years, that have done good things for the club and the community in general, that's the highest honor, if you will. So those 3 awards. So you get that, and you get a good dinner, and you get pictures and a lot of good people. Tyler he did all the pictures for us last year at the convention, so he did an amazing job.
Yeah, and one thing I have noticed, like you said, you guys have kind of opened up to everybody, magicians, cardists. If you have 2 decks, like you were saying, you're a collector, and I have seen more cardists interacting with your community. Like Tyler, Hergot, Cardistry Tyler, Nate Hillex, Cam Toner, some of these people who are my friends are
Spud.
Learning about it, which is a good thing for us. It's a good thing for you guys. It's kind of like a win-win for both communities.
Oh, sure it is. Like I said, I'm not a cardist at all, but I like interacting with anybody that's interested in cards. It was funny. I came to one of the jams and Nate was teaching something. I said, "How do you fan?" He's like, "You don't know how to fan?" I'm like, "Do you see the decks I brought?" No, I don't. I'm terrible at it, but that's kind of where all the cards are now. I mean, they have cardistry properties in them. Everybody that creates a deck has some type of, broken border or design where when you do fan it, I mean, some of this stuff looks pretty freaking amazing. They really do. It's not really my thing. I mean, there's a few things. I have a few decks. I have, I think, 5 or 6 from Emily Slights, her Nebula, which won Cardistry Deck of the Year. It was a year or 2 ago. The Beacon, which I like that one because it's Lighthouse. It kind of goes along with the Lighthouse lacquer. And another one I have somewhere called Beacon Light. It's from 1908. It's pretty similar. It's it's more of a lighthouse at night. So it's similar to that. So that kind of is like, oh, I like that. It kind of goes along with the theme of some of the decks I have. It's kind of a throwback without being one. So it kind of reminds me of a deck that I have. So like, oh, I'll get it and do that. So still can't fan, but hey, maybe I'll learn one day. Everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah. Well, like I said, with some of your old decks, I don't think they're going to fan very well. But yeah, it is cool, the interaction between the two, and a Spud is another one, obviously, who's been around with
that
you
guy's
guys.
got the fastest hands I've ever seen.
He's so good.
He makes it
makes
look
me
easy.
mad. Like he just does everything smooth and somehow quick, and I can't do smooth or quick, and he's got both.
I don't know. You look pretty good with my cards. So, but I don't. Like I said, I see what I see. I mean, you guys see it a lot more technical than I do. Just like I see a lot more history and stuff than other people do.
Yeah.
So we all kind of have our little place.
Yeah,
Or a
I've
little,
always
little.
related to like even sports and stuff. Like if you
Hmm.
know the rules well, like you can appreciate a play more. And it's kind of
Hmm.
like the same thing with cardistry. If you know what's difficult in cardistry, you can appreciate it more. Or if you know how rare a deck is for you guys, or how
Hmm.
few there are, it's obviously it's a lot easier to appreciate. Um, so yeah, it just knowing can make things so much more interesting, and appreciating things so much
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, I see a lot of the posts and stuff, around social media, and everybody they're all showing the same thing. When I show up somewhere or something, I bring something different, because I'm one of the few antique collectors that's really out there trying to promote, if you will, kind of market it like, hey, look at these, these are pretty cool, and you're starting to get a few people interested to where they're starting to buy some, which is
Mhm.
good because right now we're going to lose them faster than we can get them. But it's just a thing of it's a younger crowd. I've always been attracted to older things. Growing up in the '80s, I bought baseball cards and stuff and the new ones then, but I wanted older. I wanted the ones from the '50s and the '60s. I did the same with comic books. It was always the Silver Age from the Iron Man and Daredevil was my favorite. Some Spider Man. I wanted the Silver Age stuff. I didn't care about the new stuff. Coins were the same way. I mean, you collecting coins, you don't want new stuff anyway. You want the older stuff. Um, stuff like that. I've always liked the older stuff, and maybe because I grew up in a house that was built in 1900. Maybe that was it too. It was just they were just older. And they were. I mean, they've obviously held up, so the quality's there. The longevity, they hold their own. And I mean, I like to say I have decks here that have been around. There's nobody. I mean, these decks were made at a time where nobody is alive now from when these decks were made. Everybody that was alive at the time is no more. And
Mhm.
if these decks can tell stories, which some decks I have tell stories. There's one. Oh, here it is. So and this one's on the website. Um, so it's called Priscilla. The copyright's 1900. This one was given as a present in 1906, but it's a handwritten note that was just pasted on. And when I bought it from eBay and I got it, I opened it up, and right here it says 190, and it was I saw a six. I know I saw a six, and it flaked off about where I'm sitting. It was sitting right here somewhere when I opened it up, and I looked all over the floor. I couldn't find it. But I do know it said 1906. But it took a while to understand the handwriting because I mean, it's cursive and I can read cursive. I'm one of the few people that still do, I guess. But it took a while to kind of figure out how it was written. And since my dad's a genealogist, he's been doing family history for about 60 years. He knows how to find people and research and all this. So I get a lot of information from him. And we found out who the two people were on there, where they were from. The lady that received it was a gift from her uncle. We knew who she was, where she lived, what she did for a living, who she was married to. No kids. The other guy was from Maine. He moved to Cleveland area. When they died. It just from one little note. Within a day or two. Fortunately for it helps to have a genealogist in the family, I guess. Um, he found all the information out. I did a video on it. It's on my website under Decks with Stories.
Mhm.
Um, I think the page is called an engagement present because it was given right before the two were married. So with a deck that nice, they were 50 cents a pack back then, which is about 17 to $18 today. Bicycle was 25 cents. Congress was top of the line. They were marketed toward society, basically people that weren't slaving away in a factory.
Mm.
Fancy card parties, Indian card parties, which is probably kind of racist now. But at the time, that's just what they did. People dressed up like Washington card parties. I got a couple examples here if we have time. Let me see here. got everything over here. I got a bunch of advertisements. Here's one. I don't have these on the wall right now. My wife did some painting, so here we go. If I can get, of course, it's at the bottom. This was hanging up on the wall here not long ago. So these are all original advertisements, and these are all actual single cards. There's a couple narrows, but one wide. But it's pretty interesting. You see the different styles they use, the different borders. And I think the one in the middle, that ad is 1906, I think. These were all taken out of magazines. One of them's from 1913 or 14. But you see like McClure's magazine, Harper's magazine, Saturday Evening Post. You can find them. And I've got examples on the advertisements page on the website too, dating from about. And I've got another ad in here somewhere from 1892. Two of them. Originals that a longtime collector had given to me in 2019. She and her now late husband sold their entire collection and pretty much bought a house with it in Florida. Jeez. But she had a couple advertisements left over. She knew I was into Congress. I was still kind of off and running with the new name and everything. And when I got there, she had them waiting on me. It's about, I think, 6 or 7 advertisements, kind of like in the comic book sleeves with a back on them. So I got to get those into frame sometime and then find the wall space for it. So be nice when I get everything up and running. Just got to find the time to really get in there and do it. Yeah. So right now, everything is just kind of tucked away. I got a few books from the 1900s, 1910s that have advertisements showing all the new decks that were available in full color. And it's interesting because a lot of these, and it might be the color they used to print with, but they look a little different. It's like, I don't remember seeing one, with this border color. But the more you look at it, it's like, okay, well, they meant to do this, but it actually came out a little bit different shade. So that kind of throws us off too. But the more you see of these, and the more the more you learn about it, the more you see of them, you start to realize, okay, that's not a variation. That's just bad coloring, basically. So, and I have a large enough sample size. Like I said, I have over 200 decks. I think, let's see, 100. I think about 130 of them pre-1920. I'd have to look. All the wide size. So that's about the first 40, 35. They're about the first 35 years, I think. So I'm getting there. It's going to be a slow process, and hopefully I'm around another 30 years. But there's some decks that we just never seen a full deck, and probably never will. There's one from 1918 that the last known full deck was broken up for singles in the 1980s. Nobody's seen it in 40 years. Doesn't mean they're not out there. It's just all the collectors out there, nobody has it, so it probably doesn't exist. Or if they have it, it's tucked away and nobody knows who these people are. And one day it may pop up, just like the Grand Canyon deck, which the first one, biggest names in collectors have never had one. I brought this one out to Norwood there. I think, I don't know if you use this one or not.
I definitely saw it.
Yeah, I think Spud did, and maybe somebody else used it, I think. I trusted somebody with it, but there's only 2 decks known in existence. And it was one of those that was just wrapped in lore. In 1911, a friend of mine, I told him I wouldn't tell the story how he did it. It's amazing how he even acquired it. There's some twists and turns in it. But he just popped on one day and he's like, look what I found. And we're like, how? And he wouldn't tell the story. He finally did. And we were just like, if anybody can track these decks down, he can. But I promise him, he's never shown it to the public, so I'm not going to say who he is. I do hope he comes to the convention one day because I'd love to reunite the two. So I'm talking him into it. I'm slowly like, come on, let's put them together. We're the only two. But and then not even a year later, I get an email, and the story's on the website too. Finding a Needle in the Grand Canyon. It was published in Card Culture. which is the 52 Plus Joker monthly email newsletter. And the entire email chain is in there. I took the name out, the price I paid for it, things like that. Some important information I didn't feel like sharing. But he also sent me a picture of his great grandmother who bought the deck brand new in 1911. It had been in their family ever since. It was just one of those that, it was literally under the radar. And it was on the old website, and he messaged me and he says, I have this 1911 Grand Canyon deck. I saw it on your rarest decks page. I'm like, oh, I got to see pictures. I mean, I was dumbfounded because I think it was Thanksgiving 22, just sitting around the day of. It was Thanksgiving the day after, just hanging out. And I saw this, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, there is no way. I said, please send me pictures. And I saw the pictures. I'm like, this is amazing. And I was like, I want to tell people, but I can't say a word. And I got on with two of my friends, Matt and Colin. And I said, hey, look what just showed up. And they're like, don't mess with me. Don't mess with us. I'm like, no, this is legit. This is legit. And I said, what do you think it's worth? What do you think I could get it for? And I made him an offer. He countered. It was still well under what the perceived value. There's no real way to price one of these because, I mean, how are you going to price something when it's never been up for sale? We estimated $450. They did. I didn't pay that much for it, but at the time, I mean, that's for hardcore collectors. I mean, that would probably go in an auction. So I knew the price probably wasn't that high, but the number he came back at was reasonable. I talked to my wife. I said, look, this is the story behind this. This will probably never happen again. The way that this deck just popped out of nowhere. And I'm so glad I made this website because I get people all the time sending me messages. Once I average a message every couple of days. People wanting to know how old stuff is. If it's rare, of course. How valuable is it? What can I sell it for? Should I keep it? Things like that. And she goes, let him. Can any counter offers? Let me know. And I said, okay, this is what he's saying. She goes, okay, go ahead. So that's fine. It's it's when they're a budget or whatever. So, if you can't pass it up, I said, if I pass it up, I'm an idiot, basically. And within about a week, it showed up in my mailbox, and then everybody knew about it. I wanted to say, look, what's coming, but if I announced it too early and they got lost in the mail, then it would just be disappointing to a lot of people. So I had to bite my tongue, and I so did not want to. It's literally a once in a lifetime find.
Yeah. Have you had a story of like one of these decks getting lost in the mail? Has anybody experienced that? Because that's got to be kind of devastating.
Yeah, there's one that a friend of mine had. And I didn't want to get too deep into it, but there were some, very valuable and very desirable decks that got lost in the mail. They still have not found it, and it's been a few years. They tracked it to a certain point, and then it was gone. My guess is somebody was rifling through stuff and found them. Somebody stole them probably, which is unfortunate. But the people involved, I'm not going to say names, but I don't know exactly which decks they were, but based on what I've been told, it was a huge loss. I had one deck when I was early on collecting. Been several years. I got one. I won one off eBay. It was called Apache. It was an Indian on a horse. And Apache is a real collectible deck. I got it for a good price. That was like $20 or something. And it came from the UK, and it never showed up.
Mm-hmm.
It was the only time I've ever had any card never show up. He refunded me my money. I think I only paid like $18 for it, but nowadays those decks can go for $150 to $175 or more, depending on condition, maybe $250. For the nicer ones. With the right auction, it could go more. Depends. So I was a little bummed out about that. I've had a couple chances to get them recently, but been a little on my price range for the funds I had at the time. So they're out there. They're not real rare. They're fairly uncommon. When we say a deck's not rare, it's uncommon. That another one will pop up quicker than some of these other ones. So I'm optimistic. I'll have one eventually. So, I mean, I was bummed at the time because it was a Congress deck I didn't have, but you win some, you lose some. I've lost out on eBay a few times on some. The one that I was happy to get, which I wasn't even going to bid in the club auction April of 2 years ago. And everybody, I don't think I brought this one. This is the multi-deck. It's one of the holy grail of Congress cards. It's a Franken deck, is what everybody calls it now, but it's the original. It's the original 1904, and there's Holland again. But it's all everything. Oh, there's the Moon Fairy. That's a little bit different colorway, but I might have the other one in here somewhere. But it's all the different back designs they had at the time. And there are some, you can call them duplicates. They're just different colorways. That one's called Chink. Yeah, it's racist, but that's what they called it at the time. I have that deck. But you have different ones. You got a matching Joker in it, which is interesting because this ace and this Joker don't match. If you take the word Joker off, it matches this ace. The previous ace would be the correct one for the Joker. But I had it verified by Judy and a couple other people. The way the wear is, and I know it's hard to tell here, but the wear, the gold edges across the deck are uniform, which tells us that it was not pieced together. They didn't take 53 cards and put them together to make one. It's an original. And I got it at the auction. The starting bid was $500, and my wife asked me, she goes, what are you thinking to go for? I said, this is easily $700 deck or more, depending, on condition. I mean, a mint condition one will run you over $1,000 probably to the right collector. And she goes, well, go ahead and put a bid in to see what happens. And somebody bid $500, so the next was $525. And okay, I'm gonna bid $525. Going once, going twice, sold. I'm like, I just won this deck? Like, no way. I mean, two of us just bid on it, which was odd because I lost out on one in 2018. I think it was $375 I went for. It was a later one. But it was the first time I'd seen one with my own eyes. I'd always heard about them. And I had to wait 3.5 years for another one just to show up for sale. I mean, that's how long sometimes you wait longer, if not decades, on some of them because people don't give them up. And they sold it, and I don't know whose deck it was. They don't tell you who puts them in. Sometimes people, oh hey, you won my deck, I put a Congress deck in 22 when Cam Toner was there, and he bid on it and he won it. It actually sold for about half of what I paid for it 2 years before that, but it's all right. I'm not in it to make money or anything. I collect and preserve, but it was a duplicate. It was a great condition deck. I kind of wish I would have sold the other one, but it's funny because Cam used to live not far from me, just the next town up here, and we actually graduated from the same high school. I didn't know that. So now I graduated in 1994. I think he graduated in 2018 or something. So, but yeah, we attended the same high school, which I thought was kind of neat. So I had no idea they were even from here because when I was searching Instagram in 2020, right before everything shut down, I watched him and Nate on there all the time, and I always ask her about antique cards and this and that. Little did I know that that little upstart OPC would blow up to what it is now, and Nate just lives right across town. So, which I was surprised he came out to Columbus. I was hoping to make that one. We had something going on that weekend. But yeah, I was a little bummed to miss it, and especially when I was like, holy crap, is that Nate in the picture?
Yeah,
I thought he was completely gone, but it was nice to see him show up. So hopefully he comes back into the space soon.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be showing up at more Midwest jams now. I've in contact with him, and he seems pretty open. I think he's just kind of done with the social media aspect of everything, so
Yeah.
I have to text him directly when it's happening. um,
Yeah, I need to call him sometime. I got his number too. Um, I probably should get in touch with him sometime. So Nate, if you're watching, hey, expect a text or a phone call sometime soon. So
yeah,
you
but
can
it
catch
is
up with him, see how he's
interesting.
doing.
Yeah, it is interesting how many people you just find. Like you always assume that there's nobody in your state or in your city, especially in the Midwest here, and it's
Hmm.
like there are some. We're just spread out.
Yeah.
Um, one thing I do want to ask you that I was thinking about while you've been talking is we've been focusing a lot on Congress playing cards and USPCC. Are there other communities outside of the United States in this type of area that collects decks? Like, is there in Spain? Do you know of any that collect like from a specific company and anything like that?
There's the IPCS, the International Playing Card Society. There's a link on my website to them. I don't know. They've been around quite a long time. I think they did a joint convention with us at one time. I think it was well before I joined. But they're European, and they get together. I think it's in Turnhout, Belgium, which I think is where Cardamundi is.
Hmm.
I think the same time. There's museums there, but they have big gatherings there. That's the only one outside in Europe that I know of. Melbourne playing card collectors, they're all singles, the Aussie collectors. I think there's another smaller group in Australia. Um, but yeah, the IPCS is the biggest one I know of, but I don't know of any other European clubs. Um, that's the big one. And I think it's $10 or €10. It's similar price per year. It's real cheap to join them, which I probably should sometime. But a lot of the guys, if you're in Playing Card Collectors Club on Facebook, the guy that runs that, Gijs Van Diggle, I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong, and Joop Mueller. Those two guys are huge in the European stuff. That's anytime I have a European question, I go to Joop, which I actually met him at the convention last year. He came out all the way from is it the Netherlands? I think it's the Netherlands is where he lives. He came out. He can't make it this year. He was hoping to come out, but it was nice. He actually sent me, I think, 4 or 5 card themed ties, so which was nice of him. He asked me to pick one out, and I was like, okay, yeah, I like these two. And then I get the box, and he sent them all. I'm like, okay. He's dumping a lot of his collection. He's getting older. He's not in the best health right now. But he still runs. I think it's DXPO. The links on my site too. It's called DXPO. He does a deck of the month. It's all European. But that's the only one I know of overseas that are big in the decks and stuff. And I know they do a lot of Dondorf, Piotnik, I think Goodall, some of the London De La Rue, some of the older British decks. But those guys got a lot of knowledge. Both those guys in their 70s. Guy just is or Gaius, Geujus is how he spells his first name, but I think he's Dutch also. Dutch, I think he's Dutch. But there's been times where in there that people have questioned, basically, you guys don't know who you're talking to. I mean, this guy is probably forgotten more about cards than most of us will ever know. He's that deep into it. I mean, he's head of the International Card Collectors. I think he might have even ran one of the museums there. He's just so deep into it. He's the American version of the Dawsons, basically, I guess is the best way I can describe it, and probably knows even more than that. So he's a great resource if you ever have a question about European decks. I mean, if he or Yoke can't answer it, there's a few others in there that they'll know somebody that knows. And that's the great thing about having those guys on social media. Because if we don't know, we will know somebody that knows, or we'll know somebody that knows somebody. We're all at least a degree or two of separation from each other. So we can find the information, and we can usually find it fairly quick. Mm-hmm. With me, at least with the Congress stuff, I've focused on it so intently that I don't even need the website most of the time. I can see one and tell you pretty much about what year it was made, what ace it should have, what joker it should have, just by looking at it for 30 seconds. it's that intent hyper focus. It's just the passion and love I have for that brand. And people have asked me what attracted me to these cards, and I can't tell you what it is. It's just one of those things that I saw it. I'm like, I like this. I need more of it. I need to know more about it. And that's the best way I can describe it, and to bring those to jams and to conventions to expose the younger crowd to this. And hopefully one day, they get older, if cardistry is not the thing anymore and they want to focus on collecting, maybe they'll pick up an antique deck here and there, maybe they'll want to learn history. There's so many diverse backgrounds to everybody that does the cardistry, does the magic, does antique, vintage, modern, ephemera, all that different. We all have our different backgrounds, but we all have the same thing in common, which is cards. So.
Mm-hmm. So we have been going for a minute here, so I think we should probably try to go towards the end of the talk. Is there any like final things or topics that you want to go over, or anything you want to elaborate out of these things that we've talked about already?
No, I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered everything. But I said, not being a cardist, that it's so prevalent now in collecting. Like I said, with all the modern decks, with all the custom decks that are being made, they all have cardistry elements to them. Almost anybody that's a modern collector knows how to fan or do a few moves. I call them basic moves, even though I can't do them. But you see the same type of moves all the time. It's cardistry is kind of their own thing, but it's now more integrated into the community. I think more people realize, which is a good thing, because if you can integrate all of them together, then I think that each corner of the hobby can, kind of overlap, kind of the Venn diagram of it all. In the middle is cards, and then going out from there, cardistry, magicians, antique, modern, vintage, all that. So I think by combining more elements into decks and into the different corners, that I think eventually a lot of collectors will collect a little bit of everything. But in the end, it all comes down to what draws you into it and what you focus on. And, I'm all about learning something new every day. I try to immerse myself with anybody that collects cards so that I can learn from them, and maybe they can learn something from myself. So the more knowledge we have, I think the longer we can keep this going.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the show, I do what I call roll out the close-up pad. That's just my fancy way of saying, is there anything that you would like to promote before we kind of wrap things up?
I would say, if you're looking into antique collecting, message myself. You can find me on Instagram, the contact on the website there, or Facebook groups. I mean, I'm pretty easy to find, and I usually respond fairly quickly. Join the Facebook groups, join the pre-1950s group, Playing Card Collectors Club, the 52 plus Joker page, the group. I'm the admin of that. I took it over a few years ago to try to get some more people. We're close to 1,000 members now, which is nice. We're not all members, but it's loose. It's not affiliated with the club, but it's not unaffiliated. It's kind of an unofficial Facebook group with that name. I think it was a member that started it. But there's so many knowledgeable people in there. And, if you want to know what to look for, we can help. We love to help. We can point you in the right direction, and, learn some history, and, we can all learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. That's a great perspective on it. I'll try to put links to some of those things in the description when I get some time. So if you're watching this after the live, you'll have access to those. But like you said, just congressguy.com, congressguy on Instagram, 52 plus Joker, these types of things you can find. Kevin, thanks for being on the show, and thanks you for taking your time. And we'll just kind of wrap things up, say goodbye, and call it a night.
All right. Thanks for having me. And hopefully I see you at the next jam.
Yes, absolutely.
And then see us in Niagara Falls.